Hello everyone. This is Tobi from the Phuket Meditation Center, and you're listening to the Dharana Meditation Podcast. Let's sit together, calm the busy mind, and explore topics concerning character development, meditative training, and deeper self-knowledge.
Sit upright, the head suspended from above, the chin slightly tucked. And the body relaxed, softening. Give space to whatever kind of experience you're having right now. Allow it to be just as it is. There's nothing to change about it, nothing to control. Just sitting here quietly. Leaving yourself be. Just giving the body and the mind some time to settle down by themselves, which naturally happens if you don't interfere. You just leave things alone. Let the mind think and jump as much as it wants to. Neither following any of your thoughts nor fighting with them. The same goes for feelings, emotional states. Breathing in a way that feels nice, that you enjoy. Nothing artificial, nothing forced. Just sitting here quietly like this, being with your body, your mind, yet not participating in the various things that come up. The awareness will gradually return and accumulate in the body, feeling your presence sitting here. And while that happens, you will notice that each time you breathe out naturally, the body relaxes a bit. The mind slows down a bit. And that is without you doing anything special. Just the nature of things. Just notice, feel the body as you breathe in. Feel how it softens a bit as you breathe out. Just letting body and mind come together. Experiencing the simplicity of your presence here and now. And in this present space, thoughts are passing through. There are sounds. There's sensations. You can think of all those things as like a river, and you're sitting at the shore of that river, allowing all those things to just pass by, not being in their way, not managing anything, not jumping into the river, going with its flow, just sitting quietly by the shore. Being with what is. You might enjoy listening to the sounds around you, then just do that. Let the soundscape bring you into presence. You might also enjoy the play of sensations in your body, the arising, the passing, and let that bring you into presence. Or perhaps you enjoy to see your thoughts arise and pass naturally by themselves. The same goes for your thoughts. The observing of them pulls you into presence. It doesn't have to be static either. You might move from sounds to thoughts to feelings, back and forth. The key is the knowing of what happens while it happens. Not the managing, not the losing yourself in it, but the knowing of it. Not just knowing what is happening, but also knowing the arising and passing of your reactions to what is happening. Liking, disliking, wanting, not wanting. Managing, rejecting, trying, and so on. Treating this moment's experiences as if everything is already perfect and you're just witnessing the perfect natural play of mind, body, life. Sitting simply with aliveness, with truth. nothing to do. So much to see. The more freedom you give this moment, the more peaceful and pleasant it becomes. The more you struggle with this moment, the more unpleasant it becomes. The more you follow what arises in this moment, the more you become tied to it, imprisoned by it. When everything's quite peaceful, you're quite detached, relaxed about the way it is. And let your mind rest with the breathing. As you breathe in, simply just knowing that you're breathing in. As you breathe out, knowing that you're breathing out. Think of one breath as one meditation session. Just being mindful for this one breath. That's a good session. very gently keeping the breath in mind. No matter what goes on, there's nothing to get rid of, nothing to block out. If your mind gets distracted by thoughts, see if you can still know whether you're breathing in or out, even though there's thoughts in the background. Or sounds or feelings. We don't have to block anything out. And in your own time, perhaps even while staying with your breath, you can slowly open your eyes. If you want, stretch your body a little bit. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see all of you. Today we have a question from one of the students, Ivan. So he writes, "Hi Toby, hope all is well. Been following your podcasts. Thanks for uploading those regularly. I was reading Sam Harris's book recently, and he discussed the concept of paradox of acceptance. Quote, we we can become wiser and more compassionate and live more fulfilled by refusing to be who we are tended to be in the past. But we must also relax, accepting things as they are in the present as we strive to change ourselves. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. Perhaps could be a topic for one of your future podcasts. Okay, so here we go. So this is the first time that I've heard of this idea that there's a paradox of acceptance. But it's not the first time that I came across this idea. In fact, many, many times when we're doing retreats or longer workshops, at the end of the workshops, people would have this question. There is an apparent conflict. Like, what if I was constantly present and accepting? How would I get anything done? How would I plan? How would I change myself? How would I make life better if I just sit there and I accept everything as it is? If you see someone on the street abusing a dog and you just accept it, does that mean that you're endorsing it? Some people seem to have this idea that acceptance is almost a bit like indifference, like a form of resignation. But I don't really think that it is that. Acceptance, I think, more is like a stepping stone that gives us a platform from which we can act in a perhaps wiser, better way. If our initial instinct is either to refuse something that exists or to follow it, to be completely lost in it, then it seems to me like we're acting out of an impulse. And those impulses, they are conditioned by our past behaviors, the choices that we make, the people that we hang out with, and so on. I said it many times. So that by simply reacting in a way that is unconscious, unaware, we're then kind of imprisoning ourselves into our past. We're then repeating things that are coming naturally, as we would say. It's like it comes naturally for me to resist something that I consider to be unpleasant. If you put on, I don't know, death metal music or something like this, you're blasting it really loud. I consider that to be unpleasant. So naturally what arises in the mind in this moment is resistance. And then if I were to act that resistance out, I would just perpetuate a tendency that's already there. That's why it arises naturally. That's why I say it arises without effort, because it is preconditioned into our nervous system, into our preferences, into our whole personality, into our character, the way it's been set up so far. And of course, the same holds true for following our preferences, what we like, what we enjoy, and so on. So then we just keep repeating our past endlessly, perhaps in different shapes and forms, so that there is a variation to it, but it's essentially the same kind of patterns that run. It's either you're resisting something or you are endorsing something, you're following something. There's a third version too, which is to just be neutral about it. So we can, for example, split up all experiences into 3 categories in terms of how they feel to us. So 1, things can feel pleasant.
2, things can feel unpleasant. And 3, things can feel neutral to us. Neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So these are the 3 types of feeling. It's called Vedana in Pali, in case you're interested in finding a bit more out of this. These 3 types of feelings can be observed directly here in the present moment. I can observe the way I react to any kind of stimulus, whatever arises. Let's say it's a sound of the cat outside. And because we have a cat here, and I know it will freak her out a bit if she hears another cat come in, then that sound of the cat then is associated with something unpleasant. It's not a pleasant sound because I know, oh, trouble is brewing. I need to now do something. I hope Pan is doing something about it or something like that. Yes. So resistance arises to it and dislike arises. And this resistance and the dislike is conditioned by previous experiences that I've had with other cats coming in here. And it in a bloody way, for example. I don't want this to repeat, so I feel resistance to what's coming up. Then take the sounds of the fountains or the birds outside, which I consider to be pleasant. So they to me feel pleasant. Sound of a construction site, again, feels unpleasant to me, like unwelcome. And sound of the aircon, kind of neutral. And when things are neutral, then our reaction is not resistance or attachment, it's ignorance. We don't notice things that are neutral. They don't stand out to us. So most of our day is kind of a neutral haze that we don't really know what's going on. And there's some moments that stand out, and they stand out because they're either pleasant or unpleasant. Now this whole thing of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral is entirely conditioned by past behaviors, preferences, actions, decisions, intentions. All of that is further conditioned by who you hang out with, what culture you were born into, who your parents were, what they preferred, how you learned when you were a little child, what to make of a sound of a construction site. Maybe your parents taught you that this is really unpleasant. So there's many, many different thousands, perhaps even countless conditionings going on that make you experience the world the way you do. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. This is just one model. I'm just discussing one model of splitting up your experiences in a digestible way. Digestible here means you can pay attention to it and you can understand what is happening in the present moment. So there is an experience in the world of the senses, a thought arising, a sound arising, a sight arising, and there is the additional layer of reaction to it, which arises simultaneously due to conditioning. Being unaware of this, we are then engaged in a process of reconditioning over and over and over again what has already been cemented into our nervous system, cemented into our body-mind complex. That we can just keep doing what we have been doing. That's the reason why your thoughts, your behaviors, your emotions, moods, and so on don't differ much every day. You wake up having the same kind of thoughts, like I'm having Tobi thoughts all day long. Well, it's just conditioned into my character. It's conditioned by my environment and my past, making a very unique concoction of ideas, beliefs, opinions, random chatter, music that plays in my mind. Where does that all come from, right? You all know where it all comes from. It comes from our experiences of the past. Being unconscious of this, then, to me, feels like being imprisoned by this, being bound up with it, unfree. The best example that comes to mind is that of a dreamer that doesn't know that he's dreaming. That's a definition of not being free. That dreamer, even though he might feel he's free, is actually being dreamt rather than actively dreaming. The idea that I am actively dreaming this would have to be preceded by lucidity. You have to know that you're dreaming. You have to be awake. So then you can make kind of autonomous decisions. You can then decide, what am I going to do? Do you want to fly? Do you want to explore something new? You can only do that if you're aware. If you're unaware, you're just swept along by a wave of conditioning for the entire night. Perhaps thinking that you're free, perhaps thinking that you make good decisions and so on, but that doesn't change the fact that all those thoughts and all those experiences you're having are governing you. Totally. It's complete lack of freedom. It's like being swept away in a gigantic river. And you can swim around a little so you think you're free, but really what governs you is not you, it's the river, isn't it? You're actually governed by the river. The quality of water, the temperature of it, the contents, the stream, the floor of the river, all that is actually in control. Regardless of your little idea that you are the one doing your life. In fact, it's the river doing your life, and that river is the mass of conditioning, the countless forms of conditioning that propel you forward unconsciously. Now really reflect on that. Understand that this is actually my true situation. That's the real situation I find myself in right now. I'm being swept along by habits, tendencies, impulses, constantly. So I'm not free most of the time. But sometimes I'm a little more free, and those are the times when you are a little more awake. So this idea of acceptance has to be preceded by wakefulness. You cannot accept something if you are not awake to it, if you are not aware of it. If you're not aware of it, you'll either be ignorant of it, resisting it, or pursuing it. Those three. But if you're awake, it's like you're stepping back. It's like you're becoming lucid in your dream. That means that you know that you're dreaming while you're dreaming. My body is in bed right now. All this is in my head. It is made by mind. It's of the same taste. That's amazing. Now you have much more freedom, don't you? You're not been determined by the dream anymore. You have some say in it now. Even though it's still limited, but you do have a little more say in it. So you can, for example, make decisions based on what you truly desire. So what I really want is happiness. What I really don't want is suffering. It's pretty straightforward. That is what connects all of us. This is what we all have in common. Regardless of your religion, your background, we all want to be happy. We all want to feel good. We all want to make nice experiences. We all want to experience the good stuff. And we do not want to experience the bad stuff. Whatever that means for you. Just summarize it in, I don't want to suffer. I want to be happy. All our efforts and actions are based on that simple root. Now, since I'm now awake, I'm more aware, I can make now decisions that are more in alignment with that goal. I'm less confused about what causes happiness and what causes suffering, because if I'm unaware, I'm totally confused. I take things that cause suffering to be things that cause happiness. It tastes good, so it is good. It smells good, so it is good. And so we follow the smell and end up with food poisoning. Where does the food poisoning come from? Because it smelled good. Or because you were hungry. right? That's one of the causes. But we tend to not see that, and we blame the food. When really what we need to blame is our pursuing of it. Our ignorance when it comes to how it was prepared, and so on. That is more freedom. It is also more responsibility. So upon accepting something, it means that you are aware of what you are accepting. That gives you more freedom of choice. On the very basic first level of acceptance, you will figure that out. In fact, a lot of people who start to practice mindfulness feel that they are a bit more free, they have more choices, they can step back and take that breath before they react. Whereas before, they just reacted like a robot. You push the button and boom, the reaction goes off. And the chain just pulls you down some path. And then you wake up, kind of wake up a day later and you're like, gosh, what have I done? I wish I wouldn't have said that. Honey, I wasn't being myself. Right? It's very, very common, like people having regret. Why? Well, because we have fully been ourselves. We haven't stepped out of ourselves. We haven't made ourselves visible. So we were just lost in that construct of our habitual tendencies, which we call self. Actually, if someone says, yeah, honey, I haven't been myself, what they really say is, I've been so much myself, I completely forgot that anything else ever could exist. I couldn't see outside of my own box. I was trapped in my box. That is the problem. You've been yourself. And that includes heaven and hell. It's all the potentialities are within you. You can produce heaven and you can produce hell. If your thoughts are controlling you, that is hell. If you are controlling your thoughts, that is heaven. If you release and go above your thoughts, you go above duality of good and bad, that is freedom. Nirvana, that is the path to nirvana at least. The making things seen that you've previously been lost in, just like our dreamer. So we've previously been lost in the dream, but now he sees. And that awakening then leads kind of almost automatically to acceptance. So what do we accept? And what is acceptance? Acceptance is the seeing of, the clear seeing of what is true. It is simply that. It doesn't mean that your ego suddenly has those big arms and you're just embracing everything. Acceptance doesn't mean embracing anything. It simply means providing space for the way it is. So what you do with acceptance is you remove conflict. The conflict between the way I think it should be and the way it is. That conflict is a massive part of suffering. It should be like this, it should not be like that. So why then is it? If my little ego thinks it should not be like that, I need to ask myself, so why is it? If it shouldn't be that way, why is it that way? Why are there wars? Why are there viruses in this world? Even though I deem that they should not exist, I think a war should not exist. But it does. So now what? Do I just resist reality? Do I just try to make everyone peaceful? Do I just go from door to door and say, people just stop doing war? Stop doing it inside of yourself first. Let me show you how. How many people do you think will actually do that? If, like me, the weird little Tobi walks from house to house and asks people to find peace within themselves, who will actually do that work? Now, do you want to change the world still? So we have to become a bit more drastic. We would then have to force people to be peaceful. How do we do that? Lock them all into a little cell where they can't do any harm, or perhaps a better idea that I got from a good movie. I forgot the movie's name. It's something like Equalizer. Could that be Equalizer? Something like that. It's like a distant future where the leaders have understood that all problems of humankind boil down to having emotions. So all things creating emotions, such as art and music and so on, are outlawed. And every citizen has to constantly inject a type of drug that kills all their emotions for a period of, I think, 12 hours or something. So every 12 hours they have to inject that drug. And of course, that needs to be enforced in that society, that everyone is doing their drugs so they don't have emotions. And there's such a thing like emotional crime or something like that. It's pretty genius, that movie. So you're being an offender, a sense offender or something like that, because you are enjoying the senses. So those who want to do that, they have to hoard all these like artworks and books and music and so on in hidden places where they then meet underground. It's like a rebellion that forms. They're all not taking their drug. So that could be an option. Like, how do we make the world peaceful? Can you do it? Well, the answer is yes, you can. And it begins with your acceptance of reality, of truth. Seeing that within you there is two potentialities. The potentiality of hell and of heaven. Transcending those, going above those two potentialities, is peace. Not being compulsively pushed into them like a dreamer that doesn't know he's dreaming. You're going from heaven to hell and back and forth in your own mind. And then you're living it out in the world. You're sharing your heaven, you're sharing your hell with other beings. Instead of accepting, seeing clearly, and releasing, liberating yourself from the clutches of control, of trying. Because let's face it, I think we don't really know what we're doing as we're dealing with ourselves and with the world. Why do I say that? Well, because we keep producing the very thing that we hate the most throughout history. We produce suffering over and over as a human race for each other. It seems almost like it's the nature of this planet. It must be that way. Why? Because it's dual. For suffering to exist, there must be happiness too. What moves between those poles is energy. And that movement is called life. There have to be viruses, there have to be immune systems, there have to be police, there have to be gangsters. Like if you want to somehow remove all the bad stuff, cut it off, put it into the basement, and stay only with the good stuff, will that solve anything? No, it won't. It won't. This whole universe is based on frequency. The movement between two polarities, which we call life. It's dynamic, it's changing. It's got to be that way. My war with the fact, my war with the truth, doesn't change the fact that life is going to behave the way it always has. Look at the planetary movements. They're all circular. The earth itself is spinning, and it's spinning around the sun. Everything is circular. There's shadow sides, there's the sides of light. Day and night, in and out, health and illness, birth and death. Doesn't that ring a bell that things have to be that way? So does my resistance concerning the way things are actually make things better? Well, no. It's just resistance is one part of the polar opposite of acceptance. So we're still moving in a polar thing. To understand acceptance, you have to understand resistance. And yet acceptance itself is a way out of that polarity. Through acceptance, you can see. Through seeing, you can become wise, meaning the conflict is removed between reality and me. And that leads to ease and happiness. Now on to the second part. We have covered acceptance. Now moving forward and producing change in the world. How is that achieved? Well, through your happiness, simple as that. If you are happy, if you are at peace, then the only thing you can ever share with the world is happiness and peace. And I'm not talking about a happiness that belongs to the good polarity. I'm talking about a happiness and a peace that is above and beyond all polarity. Then you share that with the world. Your engine has changed. Because of acceptance, your engine changes. What drives you is not desire, rejection anymore. It's peace and happiness. You've been happy before, right? You've felt good before. So what do you do when you feel good? Do you go around and argue with people? Do you seek fights in the street? Do you produce unpleasantness intentionally for others or unintentionally? Chances are very unlikely. If you're happy and peaceful, then what flows out of you is precisely that. If you're angry and bitter, then what flows out of you into this world is precisely that. And we're angry and bitter because we're unfulfilled. We're not getting what we want. Or we get what we don't want. So no wonder we are angry and bitter, and then we keep sharing this with one another. So the way out of that would be through acceptance, to open up the possibility for you to see clearly that, this round and round never ends. And so through that realization, you attain peace. And that peace then is naturally shared with you, and that is what love really is. Love is the natural sharing of happiness with the world when you have it. It's not something that your little ego does. Like, I feel so full of love, I'm sending love to my friends, I'm sending love to my enemies. It's not it. That's not how it works. Love means you are beyond suffering to any degree. And what the result of that is, naturally shares itself with the world. It's not your doing at all. It's automatic. You don't have to concentrate even. You don't even have to intend it. It just does it all by itself. And we can see that on a very small level already in our own practice, that if we're a bit more released, a bit more happy, things are getting better in life all around us. Now, what if everyone would be a bit more released, a bit more happy, and a bit less in conflict with what is true? Well, of course, the whole world would get better. There'd be no more reason to fight and quarrel with one another, to divide ourselves up into tribes. There's just no reason for it. There's not even a reason to lock my door at night anymore. If people are happy, they don't go around and steal. They don't do the things that unhappy people do. So that's how I see that acceptance naturally leads to a way forward and to positive change. Not because my little ego is the one accepting and the one moving forward. It's simply because of natural laws, cause and result. It's your inside leading to a deeper state of ease. And that deeper state of ease expresses itself through your being in this world. And that way you create positive changes. You simply have more energy available to bring light into the world, or to, make things better. And that's not me saying you do that, even though I'm using those words. It does that. Good just produces good. It's not about Tobi. It's not about Sandy, which are just names. It's about good, period. It lives in you. It lives in this body and mind. It shines out of you. It's beneficial around you. And it begins with accepting the way it is, not being in conflict with truth. So I hope that clarified a little bit what Ivan was asking. Okay? All right, guys. Thank you very much for coming. Have a good week. Enjoy. It's good to be back.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and had a meaningful time. For more information and upcoming events, head over to our website at phuket-meditation.com. Thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful day.